I first found the world of coaching, found the world of self-development, I was struggling with this severe anxiety and depression. I felt like I always had a mask on where I was trying to be the most perfect version of myself. No one in my world had any idea. Like, oh, the mask is working, this is great, everyone's receiving me how I want them to. That is not a sustainable way of living.
When did you discover that pattern within you and how did you disrupt it?
I was incredibly protective of my business to the point where I wouldn't even invite people in. I wouldn't even talk about it. I wouldn't even share about it. And I remember when I just realized that the reason I'm not seeing my business grow is because
Some people look like they have it all together. They're driven, capable, and doing well on the outside, but inside, they're still shrinking, doubting, and holding back. In this episode, I sit down with transformational life and business coach Brittni Cosgrove to talk about self-sabotage, fear of rejection, and the quiet ways we protect ourselves from being fully seen. This is a conversation for anyone who knows they are meant for more, but still feels scared to step into it. Hello, Brittni. How are you doing today?
hi, I am so good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Brittni, something stood out that a lot of high achievers don't actually um, maybe think about, but it's something you said along the motivation problem. Like a lot of high achievers don't actually have a motivation problem. They actually have a protection pattern. They want more, but some part of them still feels safer playing small. When did you first realize that was true in your own life?
Such a great question. It was really a couple years ago when I first found the world of coaching, found the world of self-development, and I'll kind of paint the picture of where I was at and like what I was coming into this world with. I had been struggling with severe anxiety and depression since I was about 5 years old, and that was very much fueled by perfectionism and a fierce inner critic. And that was great for me for many years. I was a very high achiever, had many accolades, did fantastic in school, was in a lot of leadership positions. And yet I was always struggling internally. It was always this state of anxiety and never being good enough, nothing ever being enough. And so when I found the world of coaching and I started learning about how to look at even just the anxiety and the energy of it differently, I learned how to have what I call a compassionate lens with it. Because a lot of times we look at our blocks. And so I'll use, examples like perfectionism, procrastination, the different ways that we self-sabotage. And we're trying to get rid of those patterns. We're trying to push them away or ignore them, or we see them as faults. We see them as flaws with who we are. And what I learned is that by actually seeing it as a way of it trying to protect you, like every single block has feedback. Every single thing that we try to overcome, there's wisdom in it. And when you actually meet that wisdom and you actually find the value in that block, you learn how to honor the block without buying into it. And so using my example with the perfectionism and anxiety, what I learned was that I didn't need to make it go away. I didn't need to push it away. Like, it's okay if this energy is here. And I can realize the innocence and the intention behind it. Integrity is one of my core values, and that's one of the things that drives my perfectionist, and the perfectionist drives anxiety. They're all linked together. And so when I can see like, oh, the perfectionism pattern or the anxiety that's showing up, it's here because it just really wants to make sure I'm in full alignment with my output, that the things I'm putting into this world, what I'm creating, is in full integrity with who I am and the value I want to contribute to this world. And when I think of it that way, I'm like, that's an amazing intention. I want that too. I want the same thing that the perfectionist wants. I want the same thing that the anxiety wants. So we're all on the same team. And just that shift alone already creates more ease in the body and creates more ease in the mind. And it helps lessen the constriction that these blocks tend to carry. Because the blocks themselves, they're kind of like kids or like toddlers. They want to help. They want to serve, but their strategies are not always the best. And sometimes they create a mess. Sometimes they create a little chaos, but the innocence and the intention is what matters. So then it's, similar to a toddler. It's like, okay, they can be in the car. The perfectionist doesn't need to go away. It can stay here. And it's not in the driver's seat anymore. And it wasn't something that happened overnight, but it was something where just that consistent willingness and openness to see the pattern in a different light and realize the deeper intention underneath it, I began to realize my own agency with the pattern. It's like, oh, I can choose to buy into the perfectionist and let it keep running my life, or I can honor its intention, acknowledge it for being here. Because again, not trying to make it go away. And from there, choose differently. And this was when the door just completely opened into a whole different way of living and a whole different way of being, because it creates so much compassion and ease with myself. And I'm still meeting those deeper desires and those deeper intentions that all parts of me want to make sure I'm aware of. And so it's kind of like when fear kicks up, when doubt kicks up, any way, any version of a self-sabotaging pattern, all it is just something that's trying to get your attention and is trying to help you and serve you, but needs an upgrade to the strategy. And over time, I've seen this play out with so many different blocks. And again, it's not like it's ever a one and done thing, because I'm years into this work and I still have a very strong perfectionist within me. And I love that, because sometimes I want her input. I want that perfectionist to look over the different outputs that I'm putting into the world. And I've learned how to make sure she's not in the driver's seat so that I'm never buying into that pattern again. And it healed the anxiety I was living out of. It healed the depression I was living out of. And again, it just created this whole new way of living that's actually way more productive and way more effective and feels so much better along the way.
Now, that's an incredible journey. And before you got to where you are now and aligning those different feelings that in the past weren't serving you at that time, I want to go back to that feeling of perfectionism earlier before you discovered how to manage it. What were those experiences like when you were struggling with anxiety because of perfectionism? What did that look like for you in those moments?
A huge component was overworking. I would spend so many hours, so much time and energy and focus on just constantly refining, always trying to make things better. And this had a twofold effect, because on one hand, I was always at that 99% mark. So anything that didn't have an external deadline, I would get it mostly done, mostly there, but I would never put it into the world. So it was kind of almost too like a procrastination type of pattern that was showing up because of the perfectionist, because it never felt good enough. And I was always like, well, I can tweak it more. I can make it better. I can get more feedback. There was always more that I could find to work with there. And then on the other side, it created a really deep inner critic where I was constantly judging myself for not being good enough, my work not being good enough. It was just this constant vicious cycle of me down talking to myself. And again, I can see the context was trying to motivate me to do better. And it didn't work that way, because all it did was make me feel really, really crappy about myself every single step of the way. And because of that, there was a disconnect too between what the world was receiving and what I thought was putting out. So it's kind of, similar to like body dysmorphia. It was like work dysmorphia. I never felt like what people reflected back was accurate, because I didn't even know how to see anything as good enough with what I was doing. And this created a lot of slow, very, very slow momentum, like in the early time of my business. A lot of like, oh, let me draft the perfect message to send to this potential client. Let me just spend hours on the social media post only to never actually post it. Quote unquote, little things like that could seem superficial or could seem very surface level or insignificant. And yet it was the needle moving actions that I was holding myself back from. It was holding back that output because I was constantly trying to make sure it was good enough. Another way that showed up was in my relationships. A lot of the times that there was that perfectionism trying to come through in not only how I showed up, but in how I was received. So it was a very I equate it to kind of like a mask. I felt like I always had a mask on where I was trying to be the most perfect version of myself. And I was trying to make sure that others only saw the most perfect version of myself. And so when I think back to my youth, for example, all throughout high school, I was constantly described as the cheerleader, very bubbly, very happy, always a smile on her face. And I was struggling so much. I was struggling with this severe anxiety and depression. I struggled with self-harm. I struggled with just existing. And yet no one in my world had any idea. And at the time, that was kind of a point of pride because the perfectionist was like, oh, the mask is working. This is great. Everyone's receiving me how I want them to. And that is not a sustainable way of living. That is not a happy, great, joyful way of living. It was miserable. And at the time, I didn't know there was anything different. I didn't even realize that I was different than my anxiety. I just thought it was all one thing. I just thought that was one big blob of stress, anxiety, and accolades. And I'm so grateful that I just kept saying yes to opportunities because there was always that inner knowing that there was more. There had to be a different way of living. There had to be more out of life. There had to be more out of my career. Like I always had that pull deep down. And I'm so grateful to my past self who at the time, like she didn't even know how to feel emotions. I didn't even start learning how to feel my emotions until I was in my mid-20s doing this inner work, this self-development work. And yet, even back then, that past version of me was willing to follow that pull and follow that calling and just follow the open doors. And it was really the bravery and the vulnerability of opening up, cracking open to what else can be true about this way of living that helped me see there is another way. It doesn't have to be just buying into the patterns. It doesn't have to be just living out self-sabotage. It's like, oh, I can not only have compassion for these parts, I can have agency in my life. And then from there, it's just, worlds open.
I want to go back to something you mentioned there. Your manifestation of what you're experiencing with the anxiety due to this high level of perfectionism that you were trying to attain both in work and in your relationships, you said that it led to self-harm. Why did it manifest to that level for you?
Yeah, great question. You know, and this is one of my first times ever speaking about this publicly. What I think it was is that I had lost someone early on to suicide when I was in middle school-ish, and that changed my life. I have chills as I say it now. That completely changed the trajectory of everything, and it gave me a context of what's on the other side of that. Because of that, I was never willing to play the end game, if that makes sense. However, I needed an outlet for the pain I was feeling inside. It was like there was so much self-criticism, and I maybe even would consider it self-hatred, but that doesn't quite feel right. But it was kind of at that level of just almost like self-disgust. There was nothing I could do that would be good enough. I was so identified with that I just was craving an outlet for that pain. And then there was another side where it felt almost like justified punishment because I wasn't doing better, because I was so weak-minded, because all these stories that I had. It's like, okay, like not only does this feel like a great outlet, like this is justified. Like if you're not going to be good enough, it was so harmful internally at the time, and it just felt like the only way I could get an outlet without ever verbalizing I needed help. I didn't have a safe space to go to share how much I was struggling internally, and so I just did the one thing I'd heard someone else did for her pain, and it was. I just have so much. I just want to hug that younger version of me because it didn't have to be that way, but it was all she knew. It was the only solution she could think of at the time.
Thank you for sharing that. You moved so far, I'm assuming, since then. What was your first step from that point, when you're at that position in your life, what was your first positive step, and how did you realize that was the step to take?
Hmm. I think it was a few small steps towards just knowing I didn't want that as part of my life. Not necessarily as part of my story, but I just knew when I thought of my day to day, I didn't want that to be part of my day to day. And that took time to really integrate. So there was kind of, kind of like any version of an addiction, like there can be a stop and go, stop and go. But every time there was more distance between the stops and the starts. And I learned how to create even more space between that pattern and me and really see that as an action I got to choose. And so it was kind of bringing in that dominion over the choice and really owning that it was a choice. And from there, I started transitioning to like, okay, what is working? Because this isn't working. I don't want this. So what does work in my life? And that led me towards more of a career focus and just really pouring into my workspaces, really pouring into my career and the roles I had, and just putting all of that energy in towards something that I could see results from. Because hurting myself wasn't doing anything. It didn't make anything better. It didn't make me feel better. It just brought a lot of shame. And it was just, I was able to see it after time. I was able to see it clearly that it was just, there was no results that I wanted coming from it. So I started finding like, what are things that I at least don't hate and ideally actually like or enjoy, or that brings me some aliveness, and how can I like fuel into that? And so it was kind of transferring that pattern and focus into something that was at least outputting results I could get on board with. And then fast forward down the line, it was really, I think, just coming into a phase of acceptance where I started owning who I was. Like, oh, I am super ambitious. Oh, I am kind of perfectionistic and intense sometimes. I can be critical. Like, I stopped trying to change who I was. And instead, I just started acknowledging and allowing me to be who I was. And then that transitioned into not only continuing to allow my full self, but realizing and learning that that a lot of the ways I thought I was, for example, really critical, like, oh, these are just parts of me that have good intentions, starting to really rewire how I saw myself as both holistically and as the different parts within me. And that just continued transferring and just continued expanding and changing. So it's very much a journey, but I think where it started was really the first time was just realizing and acknowledging and owning that I didn't like it. I didn't like my actions. I didn't like my results. And therefore, something needed to change. And then allowing the change to be a process and a process and a constant redirection. Because again, I was always looking like, okay, if this isn't working, what is working? And following that.
What was the most challenging part about that change? So you knew you wanted to move in a different direction. However, there's usually a path that you have to go down, and sometimes that path isn't very straight and narrow. So what was like one challenge you really had to overcome to really propel you into this new version, or at least in the direction of this new version of you?
It's going to be the lesson of adaptability and openness, because my mom got me this magnet and says, when we plan, God laughs. And it was because I was constantly like, I am so type A, like I've always had plan A, B, C, all the plans, all the contingency plans, all the backup plans. And so when I was going through this chapter where I was trying to make the change and I was really focused, like, I want to be the best version of myself. I want success. I want growth. Like I wanted to be and do what I knew I was capable of. And at the time I didn't know what that looked like. So I was focusing on, I had a couple different career focuses. I traveled a lot. I was trying to figure out what it looked like, but I knew kind of an idea of it. And really, over time, is just every single plan I had, every single backup plan I had, every single plan I would make, no matter which order it was in, it would never pan out. And I was so frustrated. I was so frustrated with God, the universe, life, myself. I felt so confused and lost. Because I was like, if I have all this motivation and all this energy and all these desires, and I'm trying and I'm putting in the work and I'm making movements, why is nothing working out? Why is nothing happening? And through that, I learned the art of surrendering, not in the sense of not taking action and not making moves, but in the sense that I stopped trying to control life. Because that's what I was doing. I was trying to control all of life. And instead, I just stepped into more ownership of what is actually 100% within my control, owning that and showing up so fully for that, and then letting go of anything that's not, and creating this trust in myself and this trust in life. So the trust in life is trusting that there's an intelligence to life. Even when we don't like it, even when we think it should look different, there's an intelligence within life. And then learning to trust myself to be able to handle anything that life throws my way, to be able to navigate any of the twists and turns that life comes with. And it was that dual trust that I just built up, again, over time, just continuously building upon that trust that has allowed me to now, I still make plans, but if something doesn't work out or we need to make a change, there's not this overwhelm and panic anymore. It's just like, oh, okay. In this moment, like, what does my intuition say? What makes sense? Like, what do we need from this moment? It's a big level of presence is what I would say. It's like bringing presence into every single step of the way, every single component of your day, so that instead of trying to think ahead of everything that could happen and just planning, it's like, oh, okay, I have a plan. And when something comes up where a pivot needs to happen, in that moment, what is actually aligned? What makes sense? What needs to happen? And again, it's not that I don't plan. It's just that there's an adaptability and an openness to explore anything that could come up, knowing that no matter what comes up, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to derail me. It's not going to take me away from who I am. It's just something that comes up that we address. And like that neutrality creates a lot of ease and space in just the day to day and just how I live.
Like what you said there, it's knowing you have to make a change and you're making a huge paradigm shift from the self that you want to move away from. And as you're moving away from that former self, there are going to be some obstacles. There's going to be some challenges. There's going to be some doubts, maybe sometimes self-imposed things that you're internalizing. But I love what you said about adaptability and openness, because if I'm hearing you correctly, it's about being open to knowing that certain things may not happen as planned, even with your best intentions and all the best laid plans, but being adaptable by understanding that when those obstructions or those pieces of friction happen, is you're able to look at it for what it is and not take it personal, but realize I have control over how I respond to this, and I also have control over my next step. But it's really being cognizant of not allowing these things that obstruct you to make you feel as though you have no control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like it's that control component that people are constantly fighting for and gripping onto. And
Hmm.
it's like when we let go of what's out of our control, while also fully stepping into and owning what is within our control, it's like that's the synchronicity that allows for sometimes even better plans to come through, even better opportunities to open up. Like we never know what's on the other side of the open door. It's just, are you willing to walk through it and find out?
And your story shares, I think, a correlation with a lot of other people who are going through the same thing. Maybe they're approaching it, maybe they're in the middle of it, maybe they're coming close to the other end of it. When you think about some of the practical things that you've done to get yourself to where you are right now, what do you believe people are still stuck on, that's keeping them, in that same position, but not getting the progress they want? So since you've been through it, what do you think people are typically stuck on right now when it comes to self-sabotaging or doubting or allowing external things to control, their perspectives and their opportunities?
I think there's a really big component of people waiting for the other shoe to drop. There's like this doubt, both in themselves and in life, that it'll work out, that either they can actually do it, that they can make it happen, that it will all be okay. Like they just have a hard time really trusting that. And a lot of times people want the evidence before they can believe it. And it's like the other way around. It's like you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your success. You have to believe in your outcome over the doubts and fears that will kick up. And every time that we move towards something that we want, every time we move towards something that's new, doubts and fears will kick up. And it's not bad, it's normal. And it's like the opportunity is feeling the fear, feeling the doubt, but not buying into it, taking the action anyways, going after it anyways. And so it's similar to like the motivation conversation. A lot of people are waiting for motivation to take action when it's like, oh, it's actually the other way around. By taking action, you're building motivation. And so it's this backwards approach where people are waiting to find the proof and evidence of why what they want will work out, why it's all going to be okay, like why will they be able to do what they want to do. And instead, it's like, okay, we have to start inner first, like internal and then external. It has to come from inside. So building up that belief for yourself and in yourself, and then letting that belief be like the North Star. It's like the guiding light, and taking action from that belief and the consistency with it too. A lot of times people, if they're really, how do I say it? Like if they haven't worked through the pattern, there's a lot of start and go. And that can cause a lot of exhaustion and burnout because the starting and go is way harder than the consistency. But again, people don't realize that because the consistency feels hard at first. There's a learning curve to it. So long story short, I think that the biggest opportunities I see with people are not waiting for evidence before they create the belief in themselves and in their dreams, and in not buying into like the energetic patterns. For example, like the motivation or like waiting for things to feel right before they're in movement. It's like, okay, no, we believe in ourselves. We believe in the vision. Feel that, let that pull you through. And then as the doubts and fears and other ways that we self-sabotage kick up, noticing it. Awareness is always the first key. Like see your patterns, see how it plays out. I could not recommend more working with someone that helps you see those patterns. Like I, even to this day, am constantly working with 2 to 4 coaches at a time because I want to see all my patterns, the ones that I don't see, the ones that I'm hiding from, the ways I'm self-sabotaging. Like there's so much growth that's available for us. And a lot of the time it just takes that willingness to look within and be honest with ourselves and take that leadership within ourselves. We can't wait for someone to do it for us. Lead with yourself, be the leader for yourself, and take the actions, be in movement, start making the change, and the results will follow.
I like what you said about burnout and the stop and go, stop and go. And my mind went to city driving versus highway driving. Now, for those who drive and who have a vehicle, especially gas vehicles, understand where I'm going with this because ultimately your mileage in city driving is typically less than on highway driving. And the reason it being is because the car itself, being this huge 2-3 ton object, requires more energy to move and gain momentum from a stop position. And that's why when you're stopping at stop signs and stoplights, etc., and you're accelerating, that's burning more gas. However, when you're on a highway, you're cruising with momentum. There's more efficiency there. So your mileage, your gas lasts longer. So it's such a really good, I think, analogy to really express and illustrate what you just said about that stop and go, trying something and then giving up and then trying it again. It is mentally exhausting and it's draining and it is demotivating as well. But it's just always think about that. It's that city driving versus highway driving. You said something else there, Brittni, too, that I know you spoke to this as well. And some of the things I've looked into with the work that you've done is you talk about self-sabotage as actually self-protection. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So anytime that we go after something new or try something new, our nervous system is going to get kicked up. And that's because our nervous system is it believes and it's trained to see that anything that's new, anything that's unfamiliar is not safe. Anything that is familiar is safe, right? So new, unfamiliar, not safe. Familiar is safe. And this is a very what I would call like an archaic just system that we as humans have. It's how we're wired. And so when we start doing something new, and this typically comes with the actions when we're going after what we want. So if someone's trying to lose weight, they start going to the gym. If someone's trying to start a business, they start posting online. Like if someone's trying to be a musician, they start putting their music out there. Like whatever the actions are, they're new. And so because of this, like the fears and the doubts are going to kick up. And when that happens, the parts of us that are more focused on self-preservation than the vision, which is a lot of the parts of us, it's going to see like, oh, okay, we're in danger. What do we need to do? Like, how can we bring this back down? Like, how can we come back to what we know? How can we come back to what's familiar? And so a lot of the ways that this can show up are things like procrastination. So, for example, a new business owner is trying to start networking, they're going to keep rescheduling because they're like, oh, this week isn't right. I have too much going on. Oh, this week something came up today. It's constantly pushing back that bar because the part of them that's really uncomfortable with trying something new is trying to protect them and keep them safe. Similarly, a lot of times people have a subconscious pattern that is perpetuating and self-sabotaging, but it's around acceptance. So let's see, let me think of a good ground example. A lot of times for anyone that's offering like a personal service, like coaches, healers, therapists with their own practice, like if there anything where you feel like you have to go put yourself out there or that type of energy, there's a fear of rejection. And so they might not invite someone into their work. They might not invite someone into their space. And that's a form of self-sabotage because they're holding themselves back. They're trying to hide from sharing about what could actually help the other person. And what this is a part of them that is just craving acceptance. All it wants is acceptance and to belong and to be accepted for as it is. It's afraid of the rejection. And so it's going to do anything it can to avoid situations where it could be rejected. And it's, again, looking at it with such an innocent intention. Like, okay, these parts of us are so well intended, and they're not going to help you get to your goals. They're not going to help you reach the outcomes that you want because, again, if that's new, they're going to want to try to find something that's familiar because that's what he thinks is safe. And when we can realize that the ways that we self-sabotage, every single self-sabotaging pattern has a safety-focused and protective, like a very protective intention underneath it. All it wants is to protect you from something. We can realize that, okay, it's here for a reason. There's a deeper need that needs to get met first. So using the example of if it's afraid of rejection, that deeper need is acceptance and not acceptance from someone else. When you accept that part of you that's afraid of the rejection, that's the acceptance that it's just needing to be met. And so from there, it's like, okay, all of these self-sabotaging patterns, there's not only feedback and wisdom in them, they're innocent, And so how can we then start transforming it? And again, part of it is like the awareness, seeing the pattern and seeing it in a new light. So instead of looking at the procrastination pattern as an issue or a flaw, it's like, oh, okay, there's a deeper need that's not getting met. There's a fear that's getting kicked up. What do I need? Like, how can I hold for this part of me? And then after that, like, okay, now that this part of me is not in the driver's seat anymore, now that the need has been tended to, I've accepted this part of me. It's like, from here, what are the actions I actually want to take from here? And this is kind of like an aligned actions. It's not just action based on what everyone else is doing, following the standard blueprint. It's like, what feels right to me in this moment to go and do? And it's typically going to be the bigger needle movers. It's going to be the actions that felt so scary originally that we're avoiding because we know they're going to get us closer to the results and therefore further away from our original set points. But again, it's taking care of the need of that part of you, the self-sabotager, self-saboteur. I don't know. And from there, like, again, letting it be in the car, but you are in the driver's seat.
I'm really interested to understand more about your experience through this because your awareness around self-sabotaging and how it connects to self-protection is very enlightening. And I want to know, when did you discover that pattern within you and how did you disrupt it?
Yeah. I don't know if this was the very first time that I noticed about the pattern, but one of the biggest times where I found out it was playing out very unconsciously was earlier on in my business. So when I found the coaching world, it was like my soul came home to itself. Like I knew immediately that like coaching's in my blood. Like I am here to coach. And it became this dream that was so important to me, that was so identified with like my purpose. And it was one of the most important things in my life. And when I started my business, I was like, this is my baby. Like this is the most precious thing to me. And I was incredibly protective of my business to the point where I wouldn't even invite people in. I wouldn't even talk about it. I wouldn't even share about it because I was so protective of it. It was kind of like the example I gave earlier where it's like, I didn't even want to put it in any place where it could be vulnerable, where people could have opinions about it, where people could criticize it or anything like that. I just wanted to keep it safe and hidden away. And I remember when I just realized, like, oh my gosh, the reason I'm not seeing my business grow is because I'm never sharing it with anyone. I'm keeping it hidden away. And I was like, why am I doing this? Because it was so, I remember it was just so odd. I was like, why is this happening? And I knew about this in theory and I had worked with others on it. And this is kind of where the subconscious comes into play, where it was like, okay, my conscious mind is all on board with the goal. Like it knows exactly what it wants to scale to. It knows what it wants to see out of my business. But the subconscious was like, this is like my baby. I need to protect it with anything and everything I can. Like I can't let anyone that has opinions about it come, even see it. And when I realized that the reason I was holding myself back from even just sharing about it when I was talking with someone, sharing about it with friends, anything, was because it was so important to me that I almost couldn't even bear the thought of it not working out. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, it's just this fear that I'm going to lose one of the most important things to me. And it's like, okay, let's really slow it down. Let's actually look at this. What does it mean to lose something? What would it mean? What does success mean? What would it mean to not be successful? Like I really started getting more granular with the stories that were around this belief and this fear. And what that opened up to was like, oh, okay, well, I'm never going to grow my business if I don't share about it. And if I don't share about it and I never grow my business, like that's a lot closer to feeling the loss of it than if I were to go for it and never give up. Because again, it comes back to like, what's in my control? What's in my, there's a lot of things out of my control, but what is in my control is, that whole how many times you fall up versus how many times you get back up, that type of energy. And when I was able to really acknowledge, like, okay, my commitment to my coaching business is infinite. Like this, it's not going anywhere. Will it change? Will it transition? Will it grow? Will it look different at different chapters? Of course. However, I will never let it go because it's something that is so intrinsically wired into like my heart and what I love to do, my passions, all of it. And when I was able to see like, okay, this is coming from the subconscious. This is not logical. Like this is just me really, really wanting to see that how important this is to me. It's like, okay, I can at the same time like acknowledge and meet the need of that part. It was like, okay, I am so on board with this. I feel as much as you, little part. Like this is so important. And like, how can we continue moving forward? Like, how can we keep opening the door and really committing to that ownership that it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It's about me and how I hold for my business. So
What you're saying is by staying the same, you're costing your future. You're costing yourself your future because
yes,
I love that example. And that is such a great practical tool to take away, Brittni, because what you're saying there is in any aspect, if I have a goal I want to achieve, but yet I'm hoarding it or I'm keeping it private out of certain fears, if I just sit back and say, what do I need to achieve this goal? And as I'm writing down all the things that are telling me that I need to achieve this goal, then I could cross reference it with what are my behaviors showing right now that are supporting these things. And if one of those behaviors is not sharing my business or not sharing my ideas, and that's kind of contradicting the things that I need on that list, then that's going to give you, like what you were using before, that word clarity, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because then once I saw it with that clear lens, like, oh, okay, not only is this why I'm not seeing the results I want, like, this actually doesn't feel good.
Hmm.
It doesn't feel good to hide what I feel very tied into like purpose and passion, all that. It's like, it is a disservice to not share it.
Hmm.
Is it for everyone? Of course not. Nothing's for everyone. So it's coming back to like, why would I keep it from the people it is for, from the people that do want it? And that, again, everything takes time. Like it took time to rewire it. And it's not even like it never goes away. Like I just in the past year, I moved from one-to-one work into group work and I've started scaling in different ways. And that old pattern tried kicking up again. And it's because our systems are just so, we're silly humans, the subconscious and our nervous system, they're so wired to support us. And sometimes it's not as effective as we want it to be. But when you see it happening, again, coming back to that awareness, it's like, oh, I saw it happening. And immediately I could be like, oh, okay, this part just really needs to know. I too am on board. I too am holding the importance of my business to me. And it helps ease the doubt and the fears so that they're not taking over and it doesn't feel so big anymore. And and exactly, this can apply to any and every goal. But I absolutely love what you said about how by staying where we are, you are costing yourself your future. I was recently working with someone who she's younger and she has had creating music on her heart for years. And when she was working with me, it was the first time she ever even spoke it into existence. And when she first came to me, she's like, I don't know what I want. I don't have any goals. I don't know. A lot of I don't knows. And that was her way of protecting herself from this exact same thing. She felt so attached to her music and protecting it and being so afraid of like, what will others think? Like, how can I protect it from judgments and criticisms? That she was just keeping it locked in to the point where she had never even told anyone that she wanted to sing. And so by helping her not only acknowledge, like, okay, if you have a dream, if you have something on your heart, it's here for a reason. Trust that, follow it. And then from there, it's how can you honor the needs of the protective part, self-sabotaging part, but again, not buying into it anymore. Because if you do, and this is what she came to realize, she's like, I don't want to get to a point decades down the road where I still don't know what would have happened, where I regret never having even tried. And I just think that that is such a profound takeaway that people need to hear. It's the cost of staying the same is the future that you actually want.
You know, as you're talking about this, it sounds a lot about just finding that inner alignment. And, you mentioned how confidence is built through alignment. In some, schools of thought, confidence is built through just action, just doing. But there's an obvious dichotomy there because you could be doing something, but it could be misaligned. And you're wondering why your confidence isn't catching up, it's still lagging. However, you're stating, Brittni, that confidence happens not just from doing, but being aligned. So, how does one, I guess, first understand whether they're just doing versus, being in alignment? And then how do they disrupt it if they're not in alignment to start thinking about it?
Yeah, to me, there's a difference between confidence and genuine confidence, authentic confidence. And it comes down to embodiment. Because you can take someone, exactly what you're saying, who's so good at the to dos. They do everything, they trust themselves to take care of what needs to be done, they have the actions listed out. I think like athletes can be a great example. It's like they have the confidence in their actions. And then there's another side to it where there's a confidence in just almost like this ownership and embodiment of your fullest expression of yourself. And this is where this natural magnetism comes in, where it's like not only are you confident because you know that you will take care of what you need to do, you're confident because you genuinely love and accept your full version self, the fullest expression of who you are, the parts that we absolutely love, as well as the parts that are trying to self-sabotage us. So that's where this embodiment comes into place, where it's not just about the to-dos, because that can build confidence, sure. But there's a whole nother layer and evolution of confidence that's available when we just are in this natural state of like, I own, acknowledge, love, and accept exactly who I am, growth edges and all. And I love who I'm becoming. And you're just in this like almost open expansion of yourself. And it's that confidence that people can feel like when you walk in the room. They can feel in the conversation when you're grounded and you're just in that full authentic version of you, because you're not trying to people please. You're not trying to put on any mask to come across as any certain way. You're not trying to manage anyone else's perception of you. You're just who you are, and you are who you're becoming, and you're in that embodiment, in that state of being, and that's the energy that people feel from you.
I'm really interested to understand the work you do. Listening to you and hearing your passion is incredible, and your life story obviously builds into the work that you do also. You're a transformational life and business coach. I'm curious how those two things intersect.
They intersect so much more than anyone would realize. I'm a believer that how we do one thing is how we do all things. And when I say that, what I mean is that our patterns are not just going to show up in one area of life. And the ways that we both protect ourselves and self-sabotage are not going to just show up in one area of life. And so there are connections with our blocks when they're in money and relationships, business and health. Like they're all tied together. And so when I first got into coaching, I had a lot of business owners come to me because that was kind of how the niche I would say I originally stepped into. And we would talk business, but there was always life coaching that was going on, because what I came to realize is that when you are really, grabbing onto what you want, the career goals that you want, and the business that you want, the nonprofit you want, like that leadership within your career that you're striving for, there's a version of you that you need to unlock. She's already within you. They're already within you, but you got to unlock them. And this is where we take like the self-sabotaging patterns and the blocks and the ways that we've been kind of controlling how people perceive us. It's like letting that all fall away with compassion and with acceptance, because that's where the true transformation, the sustainable transformation takes place. And then it's more of this opening to who are you at your core. And when we're operating from there, the decisions that we need to make for our careers and our businesses, they come more easily, not easily, easefully. And they make more of this natural, innate sense. And you stop looking outside for validation, and you stop looking outside for ideas, and you stop looking outside for people to say it's good enough or anything like that. And instead, you're just like, what is on my heart to bring through? What makes the most sense for me, my values, my authenticity, and my dreams? And creating and building from there. And this has transitioned into this beautiful combination because so many people think that, okay, if I just get my business to this one state, then I'll feel confident, then I'll feel successful, then I'll feel abundant. And what I'm here to do is help people unlock the fullest version of themselves, the one where you are feeling confident, abundant, etc., along the way to actually creating the results that are not only what you want, but maybe even better than you thought was possible. And so it's, again, like this chicken and the egg. It's like, oh, what if it's like this holistic approach, because if we ignore the parts that are getting kicked up in one area of life, they're just going to get projected into another area of life. So it's looking at someone's full life through a holistic lens, where it is looking at all the parts of it individually and how does it all operate together. And this can look too like, if you're a working parent, your business plan is probably going to look different than someone who's looking to make $1 million as quick as they possibly can. Those are very different strategies and very different approaches. And yet the blocks along the way, as they become who they need to be to make those goals happen, are going to have similar through lines. And that's where I find just the magic in it all. A lot of it's in the subconscious. So the things that we don't even realize are playing out, the things that we don't even realize, like how we're holding ourselves back. And it's just unlocking and building a whole new level of awareness so that people can just continue breaking free from the self-imposed limitations. Because at the end of the day, every single person is limitless. And sometimes we just need to remember that.
I guess I'm wondering, and I've gone through this, my own experiences with this, and I still deal with it in certain capacities in different areas. But I wonder, I often say to myself, like, we have one life and everybody is living their own life. And I think sometimes we are more concerned about other people's perception of us when those individuals are probably thinking the exact same way, which means they're not really thinking about us, right? So why do you think it's so emblematic in terms of why people stay safe? Like, thinking about what other people are thinking. Like, why do you think we're still there as opposed to just taking the time we have and being the best version of ourselves regardless?
Yeah. I think it's because of a part of our brain called the amygdala. And this part, it goes all the way back to like caveman days. And when you think back to, way, way, way back when, acceptance was survival. If you were kicked out of the tribe, you weren't going to survive. So in order to survive, you needed to be accepted by others. And that part of the brain has stayed with us throughout the full evolution of humanity. And so we are so wired to desperately want other people's approval, other people's acceptance, and for that belonging, that sense of belonging. And when we are bought into that, when we are living out of that innate need without giving it to ourselves or without insourcing it for ourselves, we're going to be constantly looking outside of ourselves for that solution. And that's when we come to like the people pleasing comes up, or just, again, like the codependency, managing other people's experiences of us, because we're trying to fit into what does this person want or need in order for them to accept me. Because again, that part of the brain is so wired to believe that if they don't accept me, like, I'm not safe, like this, I'm not going to survive. And again, it's so innocent and it's archaic, because when we consciously use the mind, we can realize if, the acceptance is not what determines the survival anymore. And it's just one of those core universal needs that are within us. And so this is where I bring in like the conversation of insourcing versus outsourcing. Outsourcing is when we look outside of ourselves for someone to give it to us. A lot of times, this can also play out from childhood. If at different parts of our childhood, if we did not get the needs met in that moment, that's going to be perpetuated into our adulthood via the subconscious. So then insourcing is where we learn how to give that to ourselves. And that's kind of like the acceptance of the blocks conversation. By accepting ourselves first and foremost, we're meeting that need of acceptance, but in a way where we're not at the mercy of someone else giving it to us. It's like, I don't need to wait for someone to accept me. I can accept myself, meet that need, and blossom from there because I'm no longer trying to fit the mold I think I need to fit in order to meet that need. Instead, I learn how to give it to myself so that I'm no longer trying to get it from others.
For anybody listening and thinking about everything you've said and how much it has touched them and is touching them in their life, and for that person who's saying, okay, what is the first step? What is the first thing that I need to do now after I listen to this to go and take up more space? What would that person need to do right now?
I'm going to leave everyone with something very, very actionable that I find to be exactly one of the ways to open up the door to like, who am I? What do I want? Like, how do I want to take up space? Because that's going to look differently for everyone. It's identifying what are your top 3 to 5 core values, the 3 to 5 top ones that you cannot and will not live without, and take those values and define them for yourself. So, for example, if connection is one of your core values, connection will mean something very different to everyone. So, really get clear on what does connection mean to you. And then look at your different areas of life and find one that you really want to nourish. So, maybe it's your career. How can you infuse more of those core values into your career starting today? Like, what are things you can do starting right now to bring through more of those core values in each area of life? And as you do this, and as you start just living even more by your values, you'll start feeling more of your authentic truths come through. You'll feel more in that authenticity of who you are and how you want life to be for you. You'll feel more into your ownership of who you are and how you want to be, how you want to embody yourself. And little things can come through so that you're not waiting for the external to change before you're already starting to feel more in alignment, more in the authentic version of you, more in that expansion. Again, we don't want to wait for the external to change. So it's like, how can you infuse more of those values into your life now? And then from there, as you're feeling just more of that freedom and more of that just autonomy and how you want to be living life on your terms, it's like, okay, from here, it's like, what is that deep vision, that dream that's on your heart? The one that feels big, the one that feels scary sometimes. Again, fear isn't bad. And like, let yourself open up to owning, acknowledging like that dream. Again, that what I firmly believe that what is on our heart, it's here for a reason. And again, the world wants it. The world needs it. So tune into that vision. Let yourself dream big. And then from there, start asking questions like, who do I need to be to make this happen? And what do I need to do to make this happen? Again, always coming back to what is within our control.
I love everything you just said there. And, as you were talking about your values and nourishing the areas of your life with those values, I've never heard it put like that. So it's something that I'm going to take away and really think about. And the way my mind works is I just illustrate it in my mind. So it's like you literally put all your values into a bucket, and this bucket is water. And then you go out to your garden and you figure out, okay, where in my garden needs more attention? And you are just laying it out there. You're watering the areas of your life that need nourishment. And I love that you use that word, nourishment. And I think that's such a really good, easy, practical way to not just look at your core values and just to think about these weird thoughts in terms of, oh, I think I believe this or I think I believe this, but it's more like, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and where in my area could it be more, pertinent? Where can it be more obvious? And I love that. I just think it's such a really good, easy way to kick things off and get going. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have an infusing values worksheet. I'll share it with you to put in the show notes to share with your community because I think
Love
that
that.
it's a really powerful place to start. And then that way people aren't like, well, what are even are the value options or like what do it's all laid out. It's really clear and it'll just start creating more and more of that freedom starting right now, which I think is we can all use more of that.
Definitely, definitely. So this is the part of the conversation where I ask the guest to go over their letter to their former self. So this is the time where you get to speak to the younger version of Brittni.
Okay, amazing. So I wrote this to my like 6, 7 year old self because that was when the perfectionism was really perfectionism and the anxiety were so strong, and it was influencing my school life, my dance life, my friendships. Like it was when I first realized like, okay, there's a lot of big things going on and I didn't even know how to handle it, and so I just powered through. So say, dear little Brittni, I love you. You are so strong. You are so brave. And I am so grateful for the ways that you have worked to protect me and help me. Your uniqueness is your superpower. You are meant to stand out, to shine bright. And it's okay that that feels scary. Exactly how you feel, you get to be here. I've got you. I've got us. I see you and I know your heart, and it's medicinal to the world. I know you just want to get things right and make sure that everything's good enough and is valuable enough. I love you and I want that too. And I've got this. You don't need to be responsible for it anymore. And if you feel doubt or fear, that's okay. Again, exactly as you are, you get to be here. I'll be here with you every step of the way. And when the responsibilities and decisions come up, I've got it. You just get to enjoy, have fun, be free. And I'll be here to remind you that as often as you want, as many times as you need. I love you. I love you. I love you.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Really wonderful, and I'm sure your younger self is smiling, definitely smiling. Um, is there anything that we didn't touch on today that you wanted to talk about?
You know, this conversation was just so incredible and we went in so many different directions. So nothing new, but I just want to emphasize one more time that like if you're listening to this, you feel that nudge, you know you want more, you know you can offer more, you can bring more, like you feel that on your heart. It's like trust that. Follow the nudge. Follow the open doors. Like let yourself dream big. Don't listen to the noise of the world. Don't listen to the opinions of others. Like your dream is on your heart for a reason, and it's up to you to bring it to life. And I just really want every single listener to hear that.
Fantastic. Said with such sincerity. Thank you, Brittni, for this amazing conversation today. It was great it was great to have this time.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.